Formula One fans, here's a piece of news that nobody saw coming, and it drops just days before the Italian Grand Prix. The two engines featuring Aduo 2 have been ready for a couple of weeks now, but Ferrari still hasn't decided whether they'll actually bring them to Monza. You heard that right. The endurance tests on the dyno aren't finished yet, and the final call won't come until the end of the week. It'll explain exactly why a fully built engine can sit idle in the factory, and there's a behind-the-scenes detail about the test cells at Maranello that will genuinely surprise you. But that's not all, because the complete plan for the final stretch of the season has also come to light, and it actually includes a deliberate step backward at Singapore, where Ferrari would go back to running an older, worn engine. On top of that, the Federation has just published its official verdict on the Aduo system, complete with the full power unit rankings. And finally, the honest truth about Ferrari's real ambitions at the Temple of Speed, because Maranello knows very well that circuit isn't built for them. Let's get into all of it right now. If you don't want to miss any updates on Ferrari and Formula One, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. With that said, let's jump straight into the detailed analysis. We start with the most surprising piece of news. The two power units with Aduo 2 have been ready for a couple of weeks, yet the question of whether they'll debut at the Italian Grand Prix still hasn't been answered. The final decision will only come at the end of this week, when the components to be shipped to Monza get officially signed off. It might seem like an odd way to operate, but it reflects a reality made incredibly complicated by the current regulations. The mandatory summer factory shutdown didn't help either, because the closure extended the verification timeline for the new 6-cylinder unit. An endurance test requires an engine to complete its entire life cycle without any reliability issues, and to pass it needs to cover the equivalent distance of at least 6 Grand Prix on the dyno. And here's the detail that very few people know about. The Gestione Sportiva engine department reportedly has 21 test cells equipped with state-of-the-art dynos, but cost cap constraints and the push for a level playing field mean only 2 or 3 can actually be used, with strict operating hour limits that stretch the timelines even further. And it gets more complicated. If a reliability issue crops up and even a minor modification is needed, the entire homologation cycle has to stop and restart from scratch. It's incredibly precise work, where the smallest problem can throw a wrench into a process that simply cannot afford any slip-ups. To be fair, no reliability issues have surfaced so far, but the green light will only come with the final sign-off. So what does this engine actually promise? We're talking about a 6-cylinder unit with roughly 15 more horsepower and a completely different power curve, with the goal of closing the gap to competitors while also improving the hybrid recharging phase. And it wasn't just changes to the Garrett turbo. There were also modifications inside the combustion chamber, allowing the engine to better exploit the new fuel, specifically homologated by Shell for Monza. The performance gain comes from the combined effect of a fuel with higher calorific value and the upgraded power unit itself. The new turbocharger assembly should also help the engine maintain its power output more effectively, delivering stronger performance on the straights. Several minor components were also revised. Now let's get to the most interesting strategic part of all. The Monza debut has been evaluated very carefully. Ferrari would homologate their 4th power unit of the season there, while the first 3 engines used during the year would stay in rotation, deployed mainly during free practice sessions across various weekends. The goal is crystal clear: maximize the useful lifespan of the most developed and powerful units. And it's exactly this rotation logic that explains the next move, the one that's going to spark some debate. Because right after the Italian Grand Prix, Ferrari are reportedly already planning a voluntary step backward at Singapore. If the remaining mileage allows it, Maranello intends to follow a similar approach to the one used in Hungary. Since Marina Bay isn't particularly demanding on the power unit, the team could run a worn engine there, one without the latest updates. The logic is flawless. This way, Ferrari would protect their most recent units for the decisive final phase of the championship, avoiding the situation of reaching the closing races with very limited flexibility and component rotation, a problem that some competitors are already having to deal with. Now let's move on to the official verdict that was just published. The Federation has released the results of the Aduo system evaluations, covering the first 2 assessment periods of the season, and the picture is finally clear. As a reminder, the mechanism is designed to rebalance the performance of thermal engines that show a gap of 2% or more compared to the reference unit. For the first period, which concluded in Canada, the rankings were confirmed even after the review request submitted by Red Bull. The Austrian team's engine remains the absolute reference point, and for that reason they will not be allowed to develop their power unit. Mercedes was placed in the disadvantage window between 2 and 4%, earning the right to one additional rehomologation this year, and one more in 2027. Audi, Ferrari, and Honda were identified as sitting more than 4% back, meaning they each received 2 additional rehomologations in 2026 and 2 more in 2027, along with corresponding increases to the spending cap and dyno testing allowances. That's exactly why Ferrari can bring their second upgrade to Monza. And what about the second assessment window, covering the period between Monaco and Hungary? No additional homologations were granted to any manufacturer, an outcome that effectively freezes the current situation. Federation single-seater director Nicolas Tombazis spoke directly about the analysis process, saying, "We have conducted a thorough and comprehensive analysis as part of our review process. With the publication of the second period results, we are confident that based on the quality of the data, the analysis is incredibly robust, providing us with a high level of reliability in our conclusions." He also added, "This is the first year of the system, so it's natural that there are areas we could evolve over time, in consultation and discussion with all manufacturers." The Federation also reaffirmed that, to protect the confidentiality and intellectual property of the manufacturers, no further details about the measurements will be disclosed. The third and final review period will cover races 12 through 18, from Zandvoort all the way to Mexico City. Now let's set the record straight on Ferrari's real ambitions. It's fair to say that the Scuderia isn't arriving at Monza with a win as the primary objective. The characteristics of the Temple of Speed don't suit the SF26 on paper, not at all. The real hope is that Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc can be right on the pace of their competitors in qualifying. Those rivals remain the heavy favorites on the Brianza circuit, even more so than McLaren. The car will run in its lowest downforce aerodynamic configuration, and the updates to the floor and diffuser introduced in the Netherlands should work in Ferrari's favor. In fact, during the Zandvoort debrief, it apparently emerged that the car may have been running slightly too much downforce. The potential to fight for the front row was absolutely there, but mistakes in energy management over the lap pushed both drivers further back than they deserved. There's also one detail that opens up an intriguing scenario. Kimi Antonelli will start at the back of the grid, at least 20th, because the Bologna-born driver will take a penalty by fitting his 5th engine of the season. The hope is therefore to be right in the mix with the frontrunners and build toward a big result, exactly like what happened in Spain with Hamilton and in Britain with Leclerc. So let's pull it all together. If the goal is to get back into the Constructors' Championship fight, the execution of their home race weekend will have to be nothing short of perfect. There is one important advantage, though. With no sprint race on the schedule, the drivers will have 3 full free practice sessions to fine-tune their setup ahead of qualifying. The Italian Grand Prix will also be a decisive round for another reason. On a circuit where hybrid recharging is extremely challenging, we'll finally get a clear picture of the power unit hierarchy after the development corrections granted by the Aduo system. And one final note worth remembering: both cars will take to the track wearing a special commemorative livery dedicated to Michael Schumacher and his arrival at Maranello.